You've made weight perfectly. And now you are in the corner, warming up, and your coach calls out a combo you have drilled 1,000 times, but your brain goes blank. Here's why that happens. Hi everyone, my name is Parastoo. They call me P2. I'm a nutrition and fitness coach, and I work mostly with weight class athletes. Now, I've been in the world of rugby, bodybuilding, and Muay Thai myself. I've been through many cuts. I have, let's be honest, done some stupid shit. So in this video, it's a combination of my personal experiences, research that I have looked up, of course, conversations I've had with my colleagues, teammates, and of course, clients. Now, before I proceed, a quick disclaimer: I'm not a medical or mental health professional. My goal here is to help minimize risk and to help you recognize when it's really appropriate to seek out professional support. Before I dive in further, if you are with me right now, I just want to point out that this video is about weight cuts for weight class athletes. Obvious point. But it's more of like short-term manipulations, and we're not necessarily talking about body recomposition. So when I'm talking about weight safety, it's in the context of the weight cuts. Let's proceed. In that space, there's ways of doing it safely, minimizing the risks, or just like throwing all logic out the window and putting ourselves in harm's way. So there are certain things like having a protocol that takes timing into account and makes sure that we're not crashing too hard. And those are important variables of this conversation, very important. But what we don't talk about enough is what a weight cut does to the brain itself, whether it's in the moment or the patterns that end up building over time. What we're going to be talking about in this video are what happens to your cognition during cuts, how your brain recovers, and how repeated cuts can affect your relationship with food, your relationship with your body, and your mental state. So first and foremost, your brain during cuts itself. Now, research from the Journal of the International Society of Sports Nutrition shows that rapid weight loss, so a very aggressive quick weight cut, can impair cognitive function. You get slower processing, weaker memory, reduced focus, poor decision making. And the thing is that the speed of the cut matters. How fast, how much, and your timeline to the competition. So is it same day weigh-in with 2 hours, or are we looking at a 24 to 30 hour window? Because the truth is that even after rehydrating, your cognitive function or your cognitive fatigue can linger for hours. Sometimes it can actually take 1 or 2 days for you to quote unquote feel like yourself again, because 1 to 2%, so 1 to 2% of dehydration can actually impact cognition. So if you're having a really aggressive weight cut, of course, it's going to impact how your brain's working. And that's essential because if you're dehydrated, the fluid in your brain is reduced also. And that means that there's less cushion for your brain, which puts you at a risk. It's a higher risk for concussion. There's a higher risk for heat stroke and heat illness, and there can be a higher risk for cardiovascular issues because that's a lot of strain on the body. And speaking of strain on the body, your immune system can also tank. There's some research that I've linked below that some mixed martial artists have had elevated inflammatory markers. Of course, if you're going through a fight camp, there's that added stress from all of the training and not recovering enough, perhaps. So when your body is depleted and you're pushing yourself through something really hard that has more anxiety, more focus, and it can also have more obsessiveness and more fear of making mistakes, it can really push you. It can push you to your limits, not in necessarily a good way. Like your body is just overloaded with multiple variations of stress. And yeah, what does that do? Short term, once or twice, I think most people have been through a poor weight cut. We've done that. But again, we're trying to minimize risks and not make this a norm, especially for amateur athletes. There isn't millions of dollars on the line. You don't want to compromise your health when you have to, go do life after. What are the consequences long term? Well, a study in the Frontiers in Sport and Active Living found that disordered eating patterns in combat sports are extremely common. And first of all, let me back up for a second. Eating disorders and disordered eating are very important topics that can impact absolutely everyone, regardless of gender, race, age, all of the above. But athletes, especially athletes that have body composition or body weight as part of the conversation, are more at risk. What we know here is that 83% of men and 89% of women showed moderate to very high scores post-competition. That's pretty high, right? And I'm sharing because I also I was talking about patterns. So if we back up for a second and then we look at athletes as young as, let's say, 10 or 11, if they start doing weight cuts, it's not uncommon for them to develop like these disordered body image and some of these long-term poor eating habits that can sort of send us to early stage eating disorders. And I'm not saying one or the other. Obviously this is not my expertise. What the objective here is that we've normalized it as a culture, and everyone cuts, you'll survive. The more you do weight cuts, and if you haven't really worked to make sure it's coming from a place of understanding and peace, it's shown in research that some of the weight management pressure can increase loss of control around food, post-competition binge cycles, that yo-yo of undereating and overeating, out of control, body dissatisfaction, and of course, emotional eating, stress response. More aggressive the cut, more often than not, more psychological impact. And if you are already struggling with anxiety or depression or some other mental health issue, it can possibly create a rise in those as well, it being an aggressive weight cut. And so this is very debated. Of course, it's important to note for those of you that aren't familiar with why there are weight classes in the first place, it is to have safety so that you're not, competing against someone 30 pounds your size, unless consented. Have at it if that's what you want to do. But this part is the debate where in the International Journey of Sports Psychology and Performance, it was sort of determined that there was no significant improvement in overall performance after a cut, meaning that you don't need to cut more than is necessary. So you have your weight class. Yes, this is the sport in weight class sports, but cutting harder to go to a lower weight class doesn't necessarily give you that competitive advantage. It could actually backfire because you are so dehydrated, or you put yourself through something so aggressive, and your mental health is compromised. And again, it's different if you're doing it once, but if you're having many fights, this is just not something that is going to work in your favor, and not even just for your health, but just performance-wise. At some point, your body's going to resist it. Overall, in this point, what I want to really drive home is try and choose a weight class that you can make safely. We're trying to minimize relying on extreme water cutting. You don't want to be putting yourself in major deficits and major dehydration and major heat exposure, because they can compound and it really, really, really can compromise your health. What do we do? All right, here's some actual tactical advice now. What do we do about it? Number one, track how you respond during cuts. You as an individual. What is your baseline, mentally and physically? When does your focus slip? When are you getting irritable, foggy, disconnected, sort of getting out of it? And these are some considerations to have to kind of check in for your cognition during camp is, can you recall combos? Do you have to have instructions repeated? I'm laughing because I think many of us would agree of like our ADHD brains, or just, zoning out sometimes in the middle of instructions. And that's what I don't mean that to clarify is I do this a lot, as you have probably also gathered just watching this video or been in discussion with me. What I mean specifically is if you are out of your norm, let's say, like if you have no recall, or if there's brain fog and it's just really hard, please don't push past that. These are the symptoms to notice. And if that's happening, are you withdrawing? And if someone notices, like a teammate that gives a shit about you and they point it out, are you getting defensive? And sometimes we're not aware that we're doing that. That's why it's so important to have a good relationship with your coach and your teammates. And I kind of, my example for this is if you've ever been the designated driver amongst your group of friends, and you're kind of left to babysit people that have gotten progressively more drunk throughout the evening. And then they're like, I swear to officer, I'm not God. That is kind of what I'm saying. You're getting defensive. They're like, I'm not drunk. And then you're like, you're not making any sense, bro. Like, you need to go to bed. Here's some water. That's the stuff to recognize in yourself. And I 100% have done that. I have done that. So I'm not sharing this as ordering you or bossing you around. I'm sharing this from personal experience where, for example, it was like an injury or around a concussion where I was very dismissive. I'm like, no, I'm fine. Shh, what are you talking about? So not everyone is out to get us. Our teammates are in our corner. Okay, what else do we do? Number one, let me just recap what I just said, is adding a baseline or tracking your baseline. Number two, adding cognitive checks into camp, like having some questions that you can answer and journal on it so that you have things to refer to. And then also note the strategy around timeline. As I mentioned earlier, and as you're familiar with, same day weigh-ins and 24-hour weigh-ins require different strategies. They are not the same physiological experience. You have to give your brain, your body time. Hydration, glycogen replenishment, they all take time. Like science is science. You can't speed it up. And just be realistic with where you are given that time strategy. And then note it down, because if you cannot replicate it, they'll have questions for you. It's good to know, like with all my clients are used to me having like charts, and I ask so many questions because there's so many variables involved, and we're trying to see like where there's common denominators and if we can replicate the strategy so we don't just throw everything at the wall to see what sticks. That's very stressful. And the whole point of this is to reduce and mitigate stress. You can focus on the sport and the competition itself. And if you are cutting often or cutting hard, please seek professional support. So nutritionists, sports psychologists, we all need objective support to address our blind spots. Coaches need coaches. We're just not necessarily objective. And even for myself, I've been through this many a times. My coach athlete hat, as I call it, sometimes are in conflict. And I have to sit myself down and give myself a pep talk. And then I, of course, reach out to my support network that I've cultivated over the years. And that's important because we're all human. Now, if you find yourself agreeing with what I just said, and if you recognize some of these things as help, that you need help, if you want to build a weight cut strategy that protects your performance and prioritizes your mental health as best as possible, and you would like to work with me, the link is below. Overall, I'm not telling you not to cut. It's not my place at all. I'm just in your corner looking out for your well-being. What I am saying is to understand what's happening to your body and your brain. If we have the education and we have free will and you're consenting and you're going at it, we accept the risks that come with these choices. But especially if you're youth, if you're young, if you're new, and your coach is throwing things at you, please ask questions. And get support that is really helping you when things feel off. The fight or the competition should be the hard part. Making weight should not be destroying your mental health. Thank you so much for your attention, everyone. Catch you next time.